faster, better, and more organized. That's what Popper brings you.
Speaking of which, I bet you liked this Popper 31. And you know why I bet you liked that? Because it is very repetitive.
Well, so let's see how many lines Ailbhe actually practiced. Mm-hmm. So you have the beginning 3 lines, and then you've got another 3 lines in the middle, and then 2 lines at the end. Mm-hmm. Pretty much. So that's pretty much it. 8 lines. I mean, that's achievable for anyone. 1 bar a day.
And it was funny when I was practicing this, because I was like, are you sure we haven't done this one? Did we do this one? But I think it's because it's so repetitive. Yeah, like, exactly. This feels too familiar.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's quite nice. Did you enjoy this one?
Well, kind of. I mean, it's sort of, you know what I thought about it? It's not exactly a graceful one, but there's something gracious about this study. I felt like the musicality in it lends itself to a lot of sort of kind of schwung or something. And so I kind of enjoyed that, but then I thought, well, it is really so repetitive. So I guess he wants us to try and vary some of the phrasing that you do in this. So yeah, I enjoyed thinking about those parts, but I did think that there were some particular technical challenges, and I'm wondering if you found these, where stuff on the page looks a little bit more straightforward than it is, and the actual clarity of getting things to speak. Like, I'll give you an example. Bar 9. I found that bar particularly difficult to make it not just sound like whiny, shifty around stuff. That shift particularly. And I think when you're going for a little bit more horizontal motion or speed, I found I really tended to sort of undershift the larger shifts and slurp around too much. So I think it's about like really, really clean shifts in legato that can make it sound a bit like, ooh, if you're not thinking about it. Even if you feel like you're on top of it technically. It's one of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I find it fascinating here how many different types of shifts there are, and every challenge that Popper would have given us. So you have that kind of a shift where all of a sudden you have to go up super high in the cello, and for me, I definitely had to edge forward towards the bridge as I went up, or else it sounded whiny and disgusting. And then feeling totally relaxed when you're up there, that you don't give a big loudest note as the top of the phrase. You really want that to float at the top. So there's quite a lot going on with that stuff. And then even the beginning. So that's like a legato shift. I use my 3rd finger.
This is beautiful.
You know, why, thank you. I just love an old vocal shift. So relaxing there. Okay. Now, I did also play around with the harmonic.
Yeah, I kind of cheated and did a lot of harmonic stuff.
But the other problem is if you do that, so that's lovely, the harmonic is easy to get, but then the placement of...
Yeah.
And that was actually a challenge I found just fascinating, was like he was absolutely messing with us, bar 5. This. So you have to physically think about your shift back. And then exactly, so that idea between harmonic to real note is just, lovely. And sometimes you shift real note to harmonic, and harmonic back to real note, and that feeling of the slide one way or the other is just, you need to spend a lot of time as a cellist, because that comes up a lot in the rep.
Yeah, totally. And listen here, in that particular bar, I was wondering, did you try that at all? That 3rd beat.
Listen here, you.
Listen! I have something to add to what you just said. Did you try that at all as a reach? Because I was thinking, I bet a lot of blokes would do that with a reach. Somebody with a slightly larger hand than me.
I didn't, because I have a general lazy rule in the cello, which is, if I can do it efficiently, I mean, it obviously works perfectly to do it as a reach. It would work for me, but I tend to not like to do especially where I don't have a thumb stabilizing for me.
Yeah.
If I'm on the harmonic, that anything that is slightly off the natural position for me is just not reliable. But what is reliable is my tone spacing that I can shift. Ba, ya, ba. So
That's the thing, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought like that is maybe one instance where I would do a reach, but it's because of all the like shifts in different directions in a really short space of time. But in general, for me, it's so much more consistent for the intonation if I just shift. But I was just thought, because you were talking about that bar,
yeah, but I think it's a brilliant idea because it doesn't. It really depends on your hand. You know, that works. It's a solution, and it does take out one shift, and there are already too many in the bar. For me, I would probably have to put my thumb somewhere to stabilize, like on the side of the actual fingerboard. So for me in my hand, that's an extra thing that then I'd have to move my thumb back on, and it's just too much. So I prefer the. So I'm kind of there. I'm just literally judging and basing it on the fact that I know exactly what a tone is up there. So it'll be very interesting to see if that pans out with my choices.
Well, sometimes in the heat of the moment in that bar, it's easy. It's so
you do have to focus a lot.
Yeah.
Other places where I just found so many fascinating things. You already pointed out that mad shift. So even that bar. So I'm doing a link shift and then a substitution. So there's already two movements. And then here, I have to stay enough on the harmonic, so that's legato going to the fourth finger, like brain melt.
Oh, I'm safe. I'm back in fourth position, but to do that legato, it's quite a complex move, you know? And
well, I'm trying to use the bow thing, you know, where it lasts, rather than trying to actually substitute. Did you do it a different way?
No, I did it like you did, but I think we sometimes can underestimate actually how much physical motion's happening from this to this.
Yeah.
You know, it's a big 100%. Motion and a whole different hand angle and stuff. But coming down from that as well, I found that I really had to articulate shifts like that coming down in this study, because otherwise it just sounds way too slurpy. But yeah, really lifting and articulating. I usually don't think that much about that with the left hand because it's so much about the bow, but for somehow here it just helped with the organization for me anyway.
Yeah, if I put too much weight there, sometimes it would crack. You need enough weight. Yeah, just fascinating. That whole bar. So shifts, movements, everything you have to think about. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. And I think just a general thing about this study that I found just in listening to the way you practice this, I think so much of it is actually finding this sort of gestural release that happens with the bow and the left hand. So, you know, like stuff like nailing that shift, of course, like we have to make sure we get near the bridge, but it's also sort of feeling the gesture of these lines. And that's just where, you know, that's why we practice all these things. It's about like that synthesis of the technique we're focusing on both hands, just sort of flowing. And I think if you don't achieve that, or you don't sort of have that sense of just the way the phrases unfold, then it can be really hard for it to sound fluent, if that makes sense. I know that's a bit vague, but I know you know what I mean. I don't know if everyone else will.
But I think just to even add to that, I think thinking about all the things in separate steps first. So there's too many things going on there. Just do one with just the shifts. For me, often if I use too much bow in my shifts, then I'm struggling towards the end. So maybe think of your bow distribution. Save, pull, save, push, save, pull, so that...
I'm amazed that you can say all of that and play it so perfectly.
I was laughing because actually I had no idea whether that made any sense, what I actually did, but,
I'm impressed, man. If you can do that, you can play this study.
Well, you think so. You would imagine that would transfer. But then, so there are so many different things in there. There's like tuning, shifting, the feel, the bow position, the bow saving, distribution, and then you have to join two of those together. Like, it's just, we can't emphasize enough that this slow practice.
Another place I thought was like one of these really slurpy places that has the chance of not sounding so clean is 26 with all these big shifts, and it's exactly the same principles you were just talking about, but maybe slightly easier because you're in the lower positions. But intonation I found with all the half steps, and it's all this. I mean, everything you just did in that passage completely, I think, is the same there. But you also have the string crossing element, so you can tune your intervals across the strings.
Yeah, very helpful. And I also liked in that position as well, because it's so weird that bar 26 arrives on an up bow. I think that actually adds to the difficulty level. So I had to actually go. And it was weird because before that I didn't realize that it was actually just one down and up at the end. I kind of thought like, wow, this is all really uncomfortable feeling. And I had to separate back to that original status of, actually, let's calm down. This is totally cool.
I wish I'd done the bow practice on those two bars.
Well, do you know what I found really interesting for me as well was bar 3, and this seems like a silly thing. Obviously, bar 1 and even bar 2 is a bit aux bowing wise, but I found when I went, I was quite late getting up to the A string. I was always late, so all of that sounded uneven. It just, I was doing a kind of da 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 da.
Yeah. I thought also another bar that was a little like slimy sounding. 22 and 23. Again. It's all those replacement shifts and tiny, intonation things, really hearing the pitch. But I found I needed for some reason in this study, like just more left-hand sort of articulation, which really is not something I focus that much on my playing. I know some people are mad into it. But yeah, just in that one, I found, I don't know, it's a weird, just something different, I guess.
Yeah, I actually found that bar, because actually, funny enough, I spent my life putting too much weight in my left hand.
Oh, right, okay.
Like bullets, And actually, while that is great for clarity, it is terrible for recording. So I turned up to my first recording album, my solo album, or actually in a few things before that, where people said, "What is that noise?" And I wouldn't realize that I was like with my left hand. Actual problems, real life career. And actually, you don't need to put that much weight on. There's only certain times.
Oh, totally. And I don't even actually mean weight. It's more like the articulation of the finger. Whereas, usually when in faster things, we want to stay quite close to the string. But I somehow found that like the extra motion sort of added to the clarity somehow.
I thought, okay, I'll stretch all of these because I can. And I'll move like a crab, and then it was horribly unsuccessful. Unsuccessful. So then I went back and wrote tone, semitone, tone, tone. Now, fun fact, when I did it first, I wrote semitone in the last one, which was wrong. Obviously I did my nerdy work and then went, yay, semitone, why does this sound terrible? And I went back and I was like, because you actually wrote in the wrong thing for you, and your brain is trying to tell you that's not the note you want to go to, but your left hand is like, no, but you wrote down it's 16. So
wow, your left hand is so obedient.
It all got horribly out of control. And then eventually I found out what was going on. I was like, okay, cool. So for me, the solution was shifting number 1, tone, making sure that I knew exactly what it was, but then also pitching this. Finding the way that note is still the same as the previous C. I forgot my tone shift. And it was only when I really went into that, it was all a tiny bit murky before then, which I know is Popper's point, but
it is. Did you do this fingering in bar 88 with like the all thumb and twos?
Yes, in the bar and writer.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Only because I was too lazy to look in the other one, which now seems like a terrible prep.
No, me too. But the reason I really chose to do it is because I would never do that usually. I'd always do the 2 thumb to 1-3 pattern. But I thought, hey, I'll try it. But it is one of those things that's really hard, just because I'm not used to practicing these, keeping track of the closed versus open. I mean, that's an open third to another open third, but it's hard. It's hard for me to measure because I'm so used to the other way.
Yeah. So actually, the international edition does have the other way.
Does it?
Obviously, the easy thing about the thumb is you don't have to think about anything else. So in a way, there is a comfortable feeling about that if you can find a way to kind of think big, small, you know, it's just...
It is a brain melt, and I think it's hard to make it not sound slurpy. That's what I mean about it.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean, but I suppose the later you can leave the shift, right? I don't know, because again, you still want it to be sounding legato. This I kind of found, so a week. I would definitely give myself about 3 weeks for this kind of thing I would like go away and play it occasionally and that kind of idea.
Right.
You obviously need to move your bow forward. You also need to use less bow at the beginning so you get that crescendo. But the big thing is the fact that you come back to this. So when you're up here, it has to be the same tuning.
Of course, yeah.
And you also need to get it to sound free. So there has to be... I found quite a lot of the lower note on the D string, weight-wise on my hand, balance-wise.
Right, yeah.
Just helped a lot. And also, I felt like I didn't need to have too much weight down on either string. So more angle towards the D, but also it didn't have to be both firmly down. I noticed on my cello anyway, that you can get a free sound even without putting the fingers into the fingerboard.
Yeah, it's one of those things I think we, like, you know, it's good we brought up the idea of pressure and weight in the hand today, because you actually, I think for that, I mean, I am pressing the string down, but if you know what I mean, like if I really look and analyze it, the string is pressed down, but it's not like physically into the fingerboard, if that makes sense.
No, it's not.
So, and it doesn't need to be.
You said it much better.
No, but you're completely right.
Yeah.
And it's so important to think of those things, because you'll kill yourself trying to do something that isn't necessary.
Yeah. And that's a similar thing to the last, you know, the stretching again. That area automatically, because people feel under pressure, gets more and more weighty, and actually you probably need to have less weight as you're going up to the end. So you always need to remember to relax that shoulder and not turn in and over, you know.
Yeah.
If you can, just feel the freedom.
Yeah. Easier said than done when it comes to thirds.
And also at the very end, you know,
Yeah.
Popper always does this where he just throws in something slightly nasty where your concentration is waning already. I think that's what he's trying to do with all the repetitions is go, security blanket.
Totally. I agree. And how many times have you been caught out? I know I have, hands up, but like you're chunking along playing something that's relatively easy or follows a pattern. And I mean, this often happens to me if I'm playing like string quartet repertoire for something that's a, you know, informal gig. And the parts are relatively easy. And then out of nowhere, you have to play something that's a little bit tricky. Not probably terribly tricky, but it's that mental concentration. I think you're completely right. He's put that in at the end to be like, oh, yeah, you think you know this study? Well, let's see if you can do this when you're...
Yeah. You 100% can. You just have to, as you're coming to that last line, suddenly go, brain, engage. Inside, you just have to suddenly it's like you're giving the car another kind of like rev or something. And when you get there, you have to physically remember to do that or else that bar ain't going to go well.
I have to say, I used to think of that as like a magic power when I was younger. It was like the concentration power, that word. You know, you're going along and then you're like, uh-oh, concentrate. And you can just turn this like switch on in your brain and it will do it when it has to.
That has saved me more times in life than anything else, including those concerts where you don't have enough rehearsal time and you physically don't rehearse something that you have to play in public in an hour's time. That happens. And sometimes you just have to concentrate like a mad person to get through it, and you can feel the energy of everyone doing it. It's fascinating. So
it is fascinating. It's amazing what we do, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Well, especially when we're doing poppers every week. I assume the other double stops didn't bother you at all because you practice them every day.
Yeah, the other ones did not. So feel free to weigh in on any sort of...
Yeah, so actually I don't think bar 28 and 29 too hard. Bar 30 I found fascinating because you have so many options here as far as do you slide on the new finger? Do you use a link note? And I came up with sliding on the new finger there, then link note. So I used 2 link notes at the end.
Yeah, I think I did the same. I actually found it quite hard
to pitch. Link at the beginning.
Yeah, I think I did the same. And I actually found it really hard to pitch that high D flat. Even though it happens earlier in the bar. I was like, wait, is that... I always had to go back and check. I was like, is it right? Okay, yeah, it is. It is. It just sounds... It's very spooky sounding. Wowza! Oh my god, impressive bow speed at the end there. Beautiful. Oh, I love it when you go first and I get to hear your gorgeous sound. Oh, you have such a beautiful sound for this one, Ailbhe.
Yay! Nice job.
Oh.
So lovely and free. How nice.
It's very repetitive, isn't it? Very repetitive.
It is. Very repetitive, but lovely. Lovely. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a nice one. Lots to keep you thinking about. So, yeah, super. Go us.
Yay. Cool. Well done. Woohoo.
Super.
So,
woohoo.
see you next
See
time
you
for
next
in person. Wow.
Yay.
I know. And a special guest,
wait.
which we'll have to do a post
very
about.
exciting.
So.
Yeah, no, definitely we will do that. Super job. We'll see you next time.
Yes. Well done. See you.